What if the secret to innovation, engagement, and retention was just how you treated people and how safe you made it for them to work and be truly themselves? What if that's all you had to do?
What if?
Right? Not money, not a big promotion. You just made it safe. Today, we're going to be talking about psychological safety. Welcome to the Leadership Rewired Podcast. I'm Allison Allen. I'm joined today by Dean Martin, and we have Bhavik Shah with us. Let's dive into the topic of psychological safety and what it is.
Bhavik, lovely to have you here. From your experience, what is psychological safety and how can we move away from it being just a buzzword, or maybe people have a strong reaction to it?
Psychological safety is the freedom and right to express opinion, feedback, essentially giving your perspective on things, whether that's the system is work, whether that's within your families and your communities, without the fear of any reprimanding or any fear of retaliation.
Right.
Is having the freedom to express yourself
Right.
in a place that's professional still, in ways that still align with company values, but you want to make sure that every employee feels this way so they don't need to tiptoe around their feedback.
Yeah.
The way to understand this doesn't need to be a buzzword is just knowing that people learn differently, they work differently. It's okay to have differing opinions as long as there's empathy in the conflict rather than shouting matches. That's what leaders and organizations need to remember when fostering a culture of psychological safety.
When you think about the Harvard Business Reviews or any mental health organization, they throw this word around. And a lot of leaders are as soon as you say psychological anything, all of a sudden it's like, either fear or they're trying to run as fast as they can to get away from it. I think what you just described is the why. I think we should lay the groundwork for the listeners as to what is it? What does that mean? Even the word safety could be triggering for someone.
Sure.
Okay, how about a textbook definition? Basically, this is about fostering an environment where team members feel safe to express ideas. They can admit that they've made mistakes. They can challenge the status quo without fear of negative consequences. No yelling, no screaming, no reprimanding, no throwing people under the bus. That they can actually do all of that and be themselves.
No secret conversations during performance management.
And you know that there's a lot of organizations that you make a mistake and the reprimand can actually be fierce and out in front of everyone. I remember working with a leader once who used to say when he used to give feedback to somebody, he would walk up to their desk and put his physical hands on their shoulder.
Oh, no.
And then they would know to go into a conference room so that he can give them feedback.
How do we normalize this? When did this become normal in the workforce?
I won't mention the organization, but I'm sure the leader who's listening is probably going, Allison. I was coaching this leader, and first of all, you never touch anyone.
All right.
Let's start there.
Yes.
And when you do that, what do you think that signals to everyone else in the room? So he doesn't do that anymore. It's been a number of years. So again, it's this notion of creating a space where people can be authentic, can make mistakes, can take risk, to actually say, you know what? I think we shouldn't do that. We should do this and feel safe doing that.
That safety word is quite emotional. If we understand it as an English word and apply it to ourselves, anytime we feel threatened, even physically, we're not at our most creative. Our brains narrow their focus to how do I get out of it? Do I protect myself?
Right.
A drowning person is just thinking about one thing, you're throwing the life jacket or whatever. It's not at ease. There's no collaboration. There's not an openness. There's not a lightness. Psychological safety. If I'm in a work environment, I may not even put that language to it. I'm just trying to get through this meeting without thinking my manager is annoyed with me. That's not me saying, I've spotted an error. Can we double check on this? Or I've come up with this great idea. Or, hey, I'd love Bhavik's opinion on this. Or Allison did something nice. That's just pure survival. That's me managing my reputation.
Right.
That's not what's going to make a team productive, collaborative, and do amazing stuff together. Everybody's just trying to stay alive.
Especially today.
And what I find leaders forget, they were once in this position as well. They were once junior. They were interns at one point, analysts trying to come up in their professional worlds. they must have felt some anxiety with their leadership team. But it seems like as soon as they've hit that peak of leadership, they have forgotten that a lot of people junior to them can also feel that anxiety or nervousness to ensure they're doing their job. The workforce has changed over the last 50, 60 years. There are more guardrails now in the workforce in terms of acceptable behavior and what's not. And we also have to acknowledge that a lot of the leaders right now have been brought up in a world that's very different than it is now.
Yes.
So there is a level of empathy of their understanding. We have to hold them accountable
to make changes.
Ignorance is not an excuse anymore, especially because you have the resources, agency, and influence to learn and do better.
So it's really boiling down to how you are treating people and how you want to be treated. This is about creating safe spaces so people can do their job and go home.
Feeling engaged.
Exactly.
Right.
And in all the ways that you are leading. So how do you set a direction and ask for feedback? How do you give directives in a safe way? How do you encourage collaboration? How do you model excellence? How do you coach? Leadership is the mindset of how can I do it in a way that allows people to contribute? You're still leading. It's not a 10th extra thing you now need to do. Oh, I need to create psychological safety. It's through the way in which you are.
Right.
That's a great point, because a lot of people think it's like this other playbook they have to embed into their leadership style. It comes down to reflecting on your action. How are you leading? And a lot of leaders don't do this because they've been so ingrained and socialized in leading in certain ways. Maybe that's because they were taught that way from their previous leaders, or they just believe that this is how leaders should show up in the workplace, with a little bit of fear, right? Let's just say it. Like, there is a bit of fear, acknowledging that there's a power dynamic and understanding what that will move people forward and get to the bottom line. Let people know we are in charge and you are moving towards our revenue. You're moving towards meeting our goals. That reflection point is important. And for a lot of leaders I've worked with, they want to do this. Let's take away the equation of some leaders who are not meant to lead. Right. I'm not going to address them. For me, being in this space, I have to think about the positive.
That's another podcast.
It's another podcast. I like to think there are a lot of leaders who want to change and just don't know how, or have low capacity. That's how change is made. You work on people who want to change. For those folks, they need to reflect on what's happening and acknowledge that things change. The world is literally changing overnight, day in and day out. I think the world has changed since our last recording. The news cycle is constant, relentless. Leaders are acknowledging this, but are they adapting their styles and embedding the safety we're talking about?
I think a lot of leaders are trying to just, live in this world where all of these things are separate. And I know this term, we bring our whole selves to work, is under attack these days. But you can't separate what's going on outside from what's going on inside anymore. I might be impacted in a very different way than you or you, right? That may be weighing heavy on me. And I still know I need to do a job. I still need to do my work. I'm not saying give me a day off. Just make space for the fact that I might be impacted. And there may not be this shiny Allison showing up. It might be someone who's a little more somber, wanting to spend a lot more time alone, may ask to work from home a couple of days. You creating that space for me to be is safety.
Just understanding that if you take one day off, you'll show up more productive and more engaged. What is the harm of that? Are we working in ICUs? Like, are we working in emergency rooms?
Well, we aren't, but
Well, I think most of the people, they're in corporate, right? We're looking at corporate functions. Sure, a lot of other corporations, there's a nonprofit sector, people are serving communities, and things do seem urgent. And I don't want to take away from that work. But I think a lot of things can be pushed out 24 hours with proper notice, with proper diligence. Because if we can alter our workloads and our capacities based on a last-minute client request, why can't we adapt for the human delivering the work?
I remember being in a conference room in San Francisco.
Oh, I know the story.
And we're not going to say the name.
You're still awake screaming in the night thinking about that story.
I remember it's like 11:30 at night. Everyone is exhausted. This was after a bit of a takeover, and they were giving update on very talented engineers who had left. And this person's people were explaining, we've been on the phone with this guy, we've been explaining why they should come back, And the guy said, I'm not coming back because I do not feel psychologically safe. I'm watching these billionaires trying to understand what this means. Here's an engineer they want and brilliant at what they do, saying out loud, I want to work in an organization where I can feel psychologically safe. Some of the most talented people in your team need to feel they can be 100% themselves, or they're going to walk. That is where it becomes your problem. How do I assess whether or not I'm creating a space where people feel psychologically safe?
It's a great question. And it could be another whole podcast series, but I'll try to organize my thoughts. The first thing, it is that assessment piece. Where are we going in terms of psychological safety, and how is my leadership impacting that component of the organization? There are a few ways organizations have done this successfully. Engagement surveys, if done properly, are a great tool to understand the landscape within your organization. You have to ask specific questions, but there is a caveat that if you consistently are against psychological safety through your actions, so let's say screaming, let's say putting your unnecessary hands on folks, giving them that sort of verbal cue that things are about to go south, then no matter how much you engage with these surveys, people will not feel safe to even anonymously provide their feedback. But let's assume there is enough trust to put faith in an anonymous survey. So I was working with an unnamed company that's pretty big in the TV world. It took us a while to embed these psychological safe questions in the survey. They were like, legal was involved and compliance was involved. And I asked them, what is your intention with this survey? If your intention with the survey is just to sit on it and collect dust, then fine, don't include these questions and we'll be fine. But if your intention is to really get a pulse check, really to understand how people are feeling, you have to ask these questions. We can generalize it. We don't have to specifically name departments or people, but we have to ask questions. Like, what motivates you to be at this organization? Do you see yourself in this role, in this organization in 2 years? That's another great question. How is your talent moving? If your talent is already looking for other opportunities within 2 years, there's a problem. So you can deep dive into that data point and understand, why is that person leaving? Is it because the role is not expansive enough? Can we create more opportunities? Is it because of the leader? Is it because of the actual function of the job? Some things can't change. For example, I was in investment banking for so long. Ultimately, it was stressful, but monotonous and boring. I had heart palpitations over things I knew how to do, just the urgency of it. At the end of the day, that was my job. If I didn't like it, no matter how much I progressed in that organization, I had to move on. People obviously will naturally move on. But if there is growth and there is opportunity and people are still leaving, that's a deep dive you want to.
One of the critical signs you would see is exits. And it sounds like also lack of mobility within the organization.
Yes.
Are there any other critical signs you would notice? What if the engagement survey, because people probably didn't answer fairly, or I wasn't asked the right question, I just did that whole piece and LinkedIn around, are we asking the right questions? Because maybe we should change that. What else can a leader see?
It comes back to a lot of the softer skills, right? Which leads into your point about the bottom line, the data, the revenue, the talent. Let's say you have friends and you notice a behavior change. Like, we're close friends, we go out every day to get coffee, or we work in a space every day. And all of a sudden, I see behavior change, like Allison seems to be withdrawn, or Dean is not as chatty as they used to be. What happens? Are we just going to ignore that? You want to inquire in a way that seems empathetic. You don't have to ask all the questions. You don't have to pry. Maybe you're just having an off day. Where is the humanity in this? Can we bring that back, please? Because if you're seeing someone who you are leading and you somewhat care about, there's a duty of care. You don't need to love them as a friend or family member, but you need to respect them enough as human. And if you see changes in their behavior, you can ask for support with your peer. Be like, hey, I'm leading this team. I have this team member who seems a bit more withdrawn, or I think this political event or this global event is impacting them. I don't know how to support them. What do you suggest? Taking those first steps. And noticing. That can't get tied back to a survey. You have to be aware.
I think there's something around a person's demeanor, a shift in energy. Does the team feel harmonious? Trying to put one and one together and come up with at least three and say, okay, this is happening. Maybe this is impacting someone.
We're asking this question of what else can a leader look out for to know Have I created good psychological safety within my team? Is something off? The one then is that assessment and being able to intentionally pick up on, like, I know my team, they're a little bit different. Another thing for leaders to look at would be how deliberate are they in asking for ideas from their team, asking good quality questions, not just like, hey, here's the plan. Are you good with it, guys? Okay, let's roll.
And then never talk about it.
I asked you for your feedback. So if you are intentionally and openly coming into something saying, this is why I've hired them, I want their insight, and to openly say, hey, I've probably got a blind spot around this. I cannot see everything about this project. Right. What have I missed? What else, Allison? Do you have another idea? So if you are doing that consciously or not listening to this podcast, you might go, oh, yeah, I actually do that quite a bit with my team.
Right.
Yeah. That would yield a behavior of people approaching you.
Yeah.
I've got a question. Or can I clarify this? That's something I would love leaders to consider. You might say, my team's amazing. I meet with them. We have a plan. And they go off. Don't hear from them and they're just working.
Right.
Are your people coming back saying, hey, I love this plan, but I've got a new idea? Yeah. Or, hey, you said A, B, and C. I'm worried about that. Can I tell you why? If people are not coming forward with concerns, that's what psychological safety is. Can I come forward with my concern? I picked up on something worrying me. I've got a great idea. Yeah. Can I do it? Was my manager going to freak out, feel undermined, threaten me, or say I'm a trouble causer?
I think if you put that in an action I can take, I go back to my McKinsey days. I loved one of the guiding principles. You are obligated to dissent.
Oh, beautiful.
Like obligated to. Like push this project into a client, say this is the best thing from a strategy perspective, and you're sitting there going, it's going to bomb. It's going to fail. I loved it. And I think that actually ruined me for anybody I worked for after. You know, a lot of people don't appreciate you dissenting in my core, so I can't do anything about it. But I do think you could start there. So to your point, I'm assigning this work or I'm giving you this project and this is what I think. How about you think? And then come back and let's come to a happy medium around what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it.
Coaching and sponsoring, it's taking that extra level of understanding that leaders are in a position of teaching values and working styles to folks underneath them. Yeah. Isn't that the point as you're coming up in your organization and starting off?
We talk about this all the time. If you both report to me, it's just to get this work done.
Right.
Yes.
Of course.
And if you're both top performers or even medium to high performers, my job is to treat you well so you'll stay.
Right.
Pay you enough so you're not worried about money, making sure you have benefits, and creating an environment where you'd be successful so you don't leave.
You hired me for my great idea, his experience, and for his ability to spot errors, and for my ability to be creative. Like, you want that. Why would you hire us and then say,
and
be quiet,
mentor us, teach us your ways. Let's see where our expertise can marry your knowledge and experience.
That would require me to believe I have something I can teach.
We're moving towards another podcast.
I'm in this seat because somebody gave me this job. I've been working here 30 years and I know how to make the widget. Nobody makes the widgets better than I do. No. You come in and you just make the widgets. What else do I need to teach you?
It goes back to what I was alluding to before. Some people are just not qualified to lead. Yeah. And there are so many leaders that we all probably have collectively worked with that have gotten to their positions not because of competency. Yeah. They're just best at it in the moment.
In the moment.
They don't know how to lead. They've never gone through training or that actual experience to lead people who have different ideas, who have different work experiences. Think about those folks who you get hired sort of mid-career, right? Have 10 years or so. They're not in the same position as new interns, new analysts. They have their experience already molded into the workforce. So why they've been hired. If they're not treated well, why would they endure this?
Let's talk about that. That's a nice segue. So what are the sort of leadership behaviors you need to exhibit if you're creating an environment that's psychologically safe? We kind of talked about it here, and you care about developing people.
One of the things I've seen and I do in leadership roles, you have to role model vulnerability. That's another word that's been buzzed out of the ethos, and people get a little bit
vulnerable.
I know people are vulnerable, but let's break that down. What that actually means.
Yeah,
it's understanding that one, you even as a leader can make mistakes.
Yes. Maybe
that's with a current sale that you made, like, hey, we should have never actually brought on this client because it doesn't align with our values. Or it could have been with capacity. It could have been with just anything, just acknowledging that there was a mistake made, but I have enough skill set to remediate that. Yeah. But then also invite others to opine in on the solution. Yeah. What do you all think? This is what I think we should be doing. Accepting that mistakes happen at all levels just makes you a bit more human, because not only does that connect you with your workforce, it also encourages them that, hey, sometimes mistakes will happen. We don't want to encourage mistakes, but it's naturally going to happen. Maybe there's a rushed delivery or countless reasons why people make mistakes. Then they can go up like, hey, leader, I made this mistake, but this is what I plan to do about it. This is my remediation plan. Involve the relevant collaborators to get them up to speed on this mistake. Let's work together on this. Not only does it show the leader you've acknowledged it, you're owning up to this mistake, you're showing accountability, but you also have an action plan. Because that's what a lot of leaders care about. Fine, you made a mistake, but now what? How are we going to fix it? If you start doing that, you don't have to share the biggest mistakes you made. Right. The small things, it creates that dialogue and trust with your team. Yes.
Another way of saying what you said is, if I sit in this seat and I think I own the work, decisions, and expertise, that's a lot of pressure and in the spirit of pushing into the organization, developing people, I need to give people space and autonomy to do the work differently. To your point, if I admit I bombed on that, can you think about it? It's another way, again, of showing I make mistakes, but two, I need some new thinking on this. And so again, how do I empower people? What are other leadership behaviors?
Well, you spoke earlier about self-awareness. I think in order to demonstrate growth mindset or vulnerability, leaders need to demonstrate self-love for how they are showing up. So knowing what their skill set is and what their fallibility is, what their thinking style preferences are. They can be aware of that and appreciate that there's difference in others. Then they can then see the value in other people's things. If I just think this is how you run a project, why would I ask for anyone else's opinion? There's a value for me to say, what do you think? It doesn't mean mine is bad. It means I have a strength. So I think that's one behavior we can see and develop as leaders, which is to keep on working on yourself. Keep on understanding, what are you good at? Where are your strengths? How does that impact others? Appreciate how others work differently. You can be explicit in that.
I love that.
The only two I would add to what you both said is, I think a leader has to be keeping their head lifted up and looking at what's going on with the team. You don't even have to look at individuals all the time. Just the team. How are you connecting that team? Are there shared values and goals? Is there harmony? Are people clear on what they're supposed to be doing and not doing? Notice I didn't say take the team for drinks.
No.
Take them to a baseball game. I'm just saying, where are those moments in which you connect with the team? Make sure everybody's clear on what they're doing. Asking, are there any roadblocks? Sometimes people think they have to deal with the pain. Simply say, are there any roadblocks, any concerns? Everybody's set on what they're doing. Simple questions. Lead by example. So if you are a leader who has multiple levels within your organization, model the behavior for your directs that you want to see through the entire team. And then the directs become the people who take it to their teams, and so on.
I add to that real quick, and this is one of my favorite points. If you're modeling something, be explicit in the modeling. Say, I want to be clear with you around, this is a calculated risk I took and it didn't work out.
Right.
This is the consequence of it, and this is how we're going to recover. You showing people, naming it, and modeling good behavior.
Exactly.
You put a great segue in, is transparency. How important transparency is for leaders to exhibit on a day-to-day basis. So many decisions come last minute. They seem a bit of a whirlwind, especially if you're working in a high-paced industry. You have to make decisions that sometimes are uncomfortable, or it's not inducive to culture when it comes to the organization. And if you tell your team that, hey, this is a decision we made because of X, then people know why they're working late. They know why they have to log in during a holiday weekend. They understand why they have to be on call for certain things. It's just giving them understanding that this may be something we just have to deal with, and it's hard. We're asking a lot of labor from you. Most employees are left in the dark and don't understand the reasoning behind long hours, the decision to engage with a client who obviously does not value the same mission and ethics of the organization. But we work in a capitalistic structure.
Yes.
So we can't take that away from people. And giving them that transparency is going to go a long way of building trust and empathy across the workforce.
So we've talked about how psychological safety is about creating an environment where people can make mistakes, they can take risks, they can challenge the status quo. We talked about how you can recognize whether or not you're creating an environment that's psychologically safe. You can use engagement data, look across the team. Is there harmony? Are projects not being delivered? Are people not being developed? Are people leaving? Right? We've talked about leadership behaviors people can exhibit, lean on, adaptive leadership, team building, vulnerability. We talked about being transparent. What have we not talked about?
What are we doing in high moments of stress? A lot of this happens in specified days or hours of training or self-reflection. Working 12 years in financial services, when things hit the fan, all this work on yourself or your team goes out the window. So we have to start thinking about contingency plans. What are we doing in those high moments of stress? Most of the time, there are more stressful moments than calm moments. So what we can do is, if we're just getting on this journey of cultivating safety at the workplace, think about the reflection, assessment, and the transparency. Then try to embed small changes within your day-to-day. If you're on a project, if you have a deadline, once you have a bit of breathing room, maybe that project is delivered or you're waiting for feedback, do another reflection like, hey, did this work? Did we actually achieve what we're intended to do? If not, what can we do next time? Those small changes become a foundation built upon the cultivation of the work you're doing. But if you don't do this, say if you're doing this around July or August when things are slower, and the rest of the 10 months you're constantly working lean, creating avenues for more burnout, then this is not going to work.
Right. It has to be something you're thinking about all the time.
Strategic. It has to embed into the organization.
In those stressful moments, if you have created an environment of psychological safety, people will recognize when you miss a step, and there's no like, oh my God, let me tuck my tail between my legs and don't say anything. It's just, okay, this is a stressful moment. And they recognize it for what it is.
Embedded in quieter moments, build it into a process. So it's not contingent on the leader saying, oh, does anyone have a question? That you just say, this is how we run this type of meeting. When we have this type of one-to-one, I always open with these 3 questions. Come hell or high water, this is what I do. So it's not just me having to remember. What did I miss, folks?
How would you engage any other integration in your workforce? Think about change management principles. This needs to be treated the same. If we're separating mental health, DEI, safety, and business as is, and keeping them separate, this is never going to be successful. Think about acquisitions in the workforce. If a new system comes, there are processes, procedures, and there are PMs and business analysts. There has to be change management elements into this integration as well, so you can stay agile and adaptive. That's what I do with my work. It's how to leverage change management into this psychological safety, into this mental health work. And
you've secured your spot on the next podcast, which is where we're actually talking about where, what is the leadership actual actions and steps to build environments around, that support mental health, that support psychological safety. Please subscribe, give us your feedback, tell us what we could do better. Let us know what you think of this topic and if we need to go deeper. Thank you for listening. Until next time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.